Imagine buying a brand new Galaxy phone, firing it up, and when you press the side button, instead of Bixby popping up like it used to, you're greeted by Google Gemini. That one change made a lot of people assume Samsung had quietly buried Bixby for good. But here's the twist: Samsung isn't done with it. In fact, it looks like Bixby is about to get a fresh makeover with One UI 8.5, complete with a new visual layout that actually brings it closer to the modern AI assistants we're all getting used to. And that's interesting, because Samsung has clearly shifted its main focus to AI-driven experiences, powered by Gemini and other third-party assistants. So why keep Bixby around? The leaked internal build of One UI 8.5 shows a redesigned pop-up interface for Bixby, available in both light and dark mode, and visually it matches the new direction of Samsung's UI refresh. It's cleaner, more aligned with the rest of the system, and a lot closer to the floating assistant style that Gemini uses. The accent colors are different, but the presentation feels intentional, like Samsung doesn't want Bixby to feel outdated next to Gemini. Now, let's be honest, when people talk about voice assistants on smartphones, Samsung's Bixby isn't exactly the first name that comes up. Google Assistant, and now Gemini, has dominated in speed, accuracy, and overall usefulness. That's been one of Bixby's biggest weaknesses from day one. It could control system settings really well, better than Google Assistant in some cases, but when it came to everyday tasks, general knowledge, and flexibility, Bixby fell behind fast. And with the industry now shifting toward AI-driven assistants that understand context and perform multi-step actions, that gap is only getting wider. So why is Samsung still updating it at all? The answer might be simpler than it looks. Even if Gemini is now the default, Samsung still benefits from having its own assistant that it can control and integrate deeply into One UI without relying on Google's ecosystem. There are users who prefer something lighter, something that doesn't rely on AI cloud processing or deep data integration. And for those people, a faster, more responsive version of Bixby with a modern interface could actually be useful. There were earlier hints that Samsung plans deeper Bixby integration into modes and routines, which is interesting because that's one area where Samsung leads compared to other Android skins. Modes and routines allow for powerful automation based on time, location, app usage, or even device state. Imagine a slightly smarter Bixby that doesn't try to compete with Gemini in AI conversation, but instead becomes your dedicated system assistant, perfect for quick toggles, automation, and offline commands without going through a cloud-based AI model. That could give Bixby a new identity, rather than trying and failing to beat Gemini at its own game. But still, the real pressure isn't just coming from Google. Apple is in a similar position. Siri has been around for years, yet it still hasn't had its true AI upgrade. Apple Intelligence was supposed to bring a transformed Siri with the iPhone 16 launch, but delays pushed it back. Now, expectations are shifting towards sometime around the iPhone 17 series instead. That shows how even the biggest companies are struggling to reinvent their assistants for this new AI era. That context makes Samsung's decision to refresh Bixby less surprising. Rather than killing it off, they're keeping it in the game. Maybe not as the main star, but definitely as a backup player ready to step in when needed. And honestly, competition is always a good thing. Even if most Samsung users will default to Gemini for anything AI-related, having Bixby around forces Samsung to keep thinking about how voice assistants fit into the overall One UI experience. It keeps Google on its toes. It gives users an option that doesn't funnel everything straight through Google's AI pipeline. And for people who like having more control over their device without relying on cloud-powered assistants, Bixby still has a role to play. The redesign alone doesn't guarantee that Bixby will be better. Visual polish is one thing. Performance and intelligence are another. What people will really want to see is whether Samsung improves Bixby's responsiveness, adds smarter routines, or gives it unique features that Gemini doesn't offer. Because right now, the biggest reason to use Bixby would be for system-level control without AI complexity. If Samsung leaned into that, instead of trying to turn Bixby into another AI chatbot, it might actually carve out a clear, useful identity. At the end of the day, Bixby isn't trying to win the voice assistant war anymore, and that might be its best chance at survival. Instead of competing directly with AI giants, Samsung could reposition it as a lightweight, reliable system assistant that stays out of the way but steps in when you need something done quickly on your device. And judging by these leaks, that evolution may already be starting. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.